All right, here's the third and final set of our notes where we're connecting the Gilded Age to the Second Industrial Revolution. Remember that they go together, they happen at the same time, they're directly related, and all of this correlates with each other. So, the Second Industrial Revolution. The things that we're going to talk about, we know that it is a great age of invention, innovation. An invention is where somebody is creating something fresh, it's something new, nobody has done it before. Innovation is where you are changing things. So, like the iPhone is an innovation because it uses previous inventions. We're specifically going to talk about transportation, that part where we have railroads starting in the 1840s. By the time we get to the 1900s, those railroads are going to like subway cars and like regular cars. We've got elevators coming. Like transportation, especially mass transportation, the ability to move a lot of people from one place to another is really going to change at this time. The second big thing that we talk about for this unit, this age of invention, is oil. Not only is it used as a fuel like a gasoline, it's also used to make sure that gears and other parts of machines can move smoothly, lubricating the mechanizations. The third really big thing is steel. Yes, it goes back with the Bessemer process where we're taking iron ore, we're heating it up, we're making steel. This is the time period where steel becomes cheap to make, fast to make. It's a money-making industry. And think about all of the things that it requires steel. Since steel is there, we can now make skyscrapers and build cities up instead of out. We have the elevators tied to that. We use steel for railroad ties. We use steel for cars. Like if you look around right now as you listen to this, I almost bet you can find something made out of steel. The last big thing we're going to talk about is communications, where we go from the telegraph, where we can send out Morse code, to the telephone, and how it adjusts and it changes over time. The final part that we will look at is going to be general industrial and technological advances. Honestly, it's not final. It's kind of like in all of this, it's interspersed between because it really just means and all the other important stuff as well. So first off, don't write all this down. It's there so that you can see. All right, when we're talking about transportation, you need to see what the first car looked like. That picture on the right, that's the diagram for the first car. All right, they're going to add the carriage later, but if you'll notice, you'll see how big it is. The steering column right through here where it's kind of like a fork on a pike. This is the seat. I mean, look at how big this is, how overwhelmingly lopsided the engine is right here and how it's going to create problems. Now, it's made through steam. Steam is created when you heat up water. But this is the first part of you don't need a horse to pull a cart. Now, we do get to regular cars right here with the Dureas. All right, Charles and Frank, they're going to build the first successful gasoline-powered automobile in the United States. They tested it in 1893. It's definitely going to work. Okay, so they test it. It works out well. This is it right there. You can see actually a better portion here where you've got your bench up front, the engine's here. If you notice, it still kind of works much like a bicycle where that's pulling it forward, that chain, that belt. Look, you get cushiony seats. Then that's going to go all the way. Oh my God, that's color. This is fancy. There's a roof now. No, there aren't seat belts. The first cars, there weren't even brakes. Definitely no windshield, so hope you dodge the bugs. But I need you to see the progression going from one place to another, specifically looking at how cars changed over time. All right? When we get to the early 1900s, we get to Henry Ford. Henry Ford made the Ford Motor Company, where they make Ford cars. And again, I don't want you to write all of this down. Honestly, the most important part about Henry Ford, this should be in your notes, is that he does the movable assembly line. All right? Where instead of building a car from start to scratch, where everybody has to know how to do all of the jobs, with the movable assembly line, You can be at one place, specialize in one job, and then when you're done with that, it moves on down to the next person, and you can start on the next car and work on that one job. And when you're done, it can move on down to the next person, and so on and so forth. Instead of waiting for one full car to be finished, you can work on a whole bunch of cars at one time. This is innovation. All right? Henry Ford changes not just how you build cars, but if you think about it, this is the way we produce things today, where you don't wait until that one thing is done. You've got that assembly line moving forward. All right? That takes you to, once you have cars, this is the Model T, also known as the Tin Lizzie. I mean, wow, windshields, lights. Dude, I bet they might even have a horn. No seatbelts yet. I mean, that 65 Mustang in the corner doesn't even have seatbelts yet. But automobiles, they make jobs. Think about how many jobs just besides making the cars. All right, now you have gas stations. Gas stations, now you have people that are out there drilling for more oil so they can change that into gas. You've got tire shops. From just the advent of cars, so many other jobs are created because it creates an entire industry. They create motels because of this, because people start traveling along the roads. Because a motel is a motor hotel, meaning you stop at a motel to spend the night. You're not going to those places without a car. All right, so we see that gradual change of Ford cars over time. All right, as we're still talking about technology, you have to touch on railroads. Yes, they've had railroads since the 1840s. Really, this first sentence is the only thing that you need to write down. Railroads ruled the land mid to late 1800s into the 1900s. Look around where we live. We still use railroads today, especially in production capacities down by the river with a lot of plants. All right, there are railroads that go through Decatur all of the time. So railroads ruled the land mid-late 1800s into the 1900s. Here's an example of, railroads from that time. Obviously very environmentally friendly. That's sarcasm. Okay, obviously we know that the smoke there isn't just for aesthetics, not there for looks. But one of the big things from the railroads that occurs is the Transcontinental Railroad. They take railroads from the East Coast and railroads from the West Coast. They start building lines, all right? So from the Atlantic, they start going to the middle of the country. From the Pacific, they start going to the middle of the country, and eventually they meet. Well, it's not really in the middle, but they meet in the middle from where they started, and it connects the nation. It makes it easier to travel from one coast to the other coast. It makes it easier for people to move about the country. It makes it easier to ship and change, and this opens up that entire west side of the country for further development and people moving out there. Well, if we're still on this transportation, we got to talk about Wilbur and Orville Wright. They're the Wright brothers. And I hope you already know what the Wright brothers did. Do you? If you said that they made airplanes, you are correct. Here is a picture of the Wright brothers airplane. The first flight happens 1903. They actually test this out. Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, Kitty, capital HAWK, Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. They did it on the Outer Banks so that people couldn't just steal their ideas. The first flight, 12 seconds, 120 feet up into the air. This is Orville Wright right here. See how he's laying down? You can actually go to the Smithsonian and see this today. All right. Obviously, we know that this opens up helicopters, one place to the other. This opens up rocket ships. The idea of flying, yes, that first flight takes 12 seconds. You can actually go and see the stone monuments from one place to the next and how long how far they went. But we can take planes to travel to other continents. That flight, this first spot, those 12 seconds are some of the most important 12 seconds in human history as it pertains to technology. All right, and we know, just like all of the other stuff is said, this is already in your notes. You don't have to put it in your notes again. Crude oil, not to be mixed up with regular oil that you use for cooking. Crude oil Yes, it existed for hundreds of years prior. Well, we know, like humans have known about crude oil for hundreds of years prior to this, but like they really didn't have a purpose for it. Once we have this industrial revolution where machines start taking the jobs of humans, and I would definitely have that in your notes, machines start doing the jobs of humans. Now, that doesn't mean like there's a robot revolution. It just means that instead of sewing clothes by hand, use machines. Instead of walking down the street, you have a car. All right? Oil is necessary. Oil is not just a fuel, it's that lubricant that we talked about, making sure everything moves carefully. In a car, if your car runs out of oil, I hate to break it to you, your entire engine is going to break, never to be repaired again. You're going to have to get a brand new one. Why your parents get oil changes. All right? So as more technology comes forward, we also see that people need more oil. Enter in Edwin L. Drake, also known as Uncle Billy Smith. They kick off the oil boom. That's Drake. That's Smith. Remember, if it's a different color, definitely needs to be in your notes. The first oil boom happens in Titusville, Pennsylvania, 1859. And if people go there and you see that they've made a lot of money drilling for oil, this is where they do it. It's like the gold rush, all right? There's going to be a rush on oil. All right, that ties us back to John D. Rockefeller. You already have your notes on him. Remember, we wrote it in class where you have his name, Rockefeller. You have how he made his money. That was oil. His company specifically was Standard Oil. We even talked about how he used vertical and horizontal integration in order to build his monopolies. Okay, all of that is already in your notes. This is just a reminder of that tie back in, where you're not thinking that this industrialist is separate. Now, under that industrialist, you could think, is he a robber baron? Is he a captain of industry? It doesn't matter. That's just how people were viewed. He is an industrialist. Now, you can see right here, we broke down this political cartoon in class about how you can see the different facets of the different types of railroads, the oil refineries up here, the oil wells up here, how it's like that part where he is standing firm. At this time, in American history, those industrialists were more powerful than the president. I mean, remember when the American government needed money, who did they go to? J.P. Morgan. All right, so those industrialists, they're the ones running stuff. All right. Then you have Elijah McCoy. Still goes back with the oil portion, the oil segment of this. He saw that there was a demand for oil prior to his invention of the oil cup. If you needed to oil machinery to keep it loose, to keep it moving, you'd have to stop the machine, take it apart, spritz the oil in, put it back together, start it again. He creates the oil cup. All right? That part where, just like a cup holds water, the oil cup holds oil. It goes inside the machine and it gradually lets out the oil as it's needed. So you don't have to stop the machine as often so that you can oil it. All right, this solves a huge problem, and it's probably one of the top 5 inventions of the Industrial Revolution, because think about how many machines have the ability to have oil on the inside. Also where we get the real McCoy, because other people tried and failed. Coincidentally, he is an African American. He is a Black inventor. And that's not like why he should be known, but it definitely should be recognized in a time period where it was hard for other races, minorities. He creates something that our life today would definitely, we wouldn't have things. Like a lot of our stuff wouldn't exist for real. Now, from this and from all of the inventors, the only thing I need you to write down is like who they are, like what their name is and what they invented. So like for Elijah McCoy, invented the oil cup. Boom, done. For Sir Henry Bessemer, Bessemer process, but this one you need to know what it is, but it's already in your notes from before. It should already be in your notes from before, because we know that Carnegie used the Bessemer process. It was a way to make iron, turn it into steel, to take iron, turn it into steel, so it makes steel. It makes it cheap, makes it fast. It makes it profitable to make steel, all right? So because it's profitable to make steel, you then have somebody like Andrew Carnegie. You have him in your notes. You don't need to write anything down for him. But it opens up that idea of Andrew Carnegie building his wealth from steel. All right, that's Andrew Carnegie there. There's also a bell ringer that has to do with Carnegie and how he took care of the strikes at his homestead plant in Pennsylvania. When we're looking at that tie into all of this together, Andrew Carnegie was an immigrant that came over from Scotland, barely had any money to his name, starts this business, and eventually becomes one of the richest gentlemen in the entire world. His first order for his steel company, railroad. All right? And some of that stuff may seem kind of familiar to you because Pennsylvania Railroad, like the monopoly game is based on these guys. It's based on this time period to show everybody what monopolies were. It's not just a game. We know that a monopoly is where there's limited competition. The whole time you play Monopoly, you're trying to bankrupt people. Harsh. All right? Then we get to Samuel Morse. Sam F.B. Morse, he makes the telegraph. Well, the one-wire telegraph, but let's just shorten it to telegraph. That's what you need to write. Sam Morse invents the telegraph. All right? It's a system of dots and dashes. He uses Morse code. He comes up with Morse code, that part where you can instantly communicate with others over long distances. All right? The first telegraph looked like this. You'd press this down. It would have a short beep, and a dash would be a longer beep. All right. If you were in class, we went to this link right here. If I go to that link now, though, it's not going to film it. But I can send it to you if you need to. So just email me. But like, it's just a link where you can go in, type in a message, and you actually see how long it is. Because like, for example, the letter H is 4 beeps. So just typing in H is beep, 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 beep. Yeah, sorry, I had to count. All right, long day. 4 beeps, just for one letter. Each letter has either a series of dots and dashes. Dots and dashes. It's like ancient texting. All right? But we know that it's not going to stop at the telegraph, and it's going to go to the telephone. So right here, you need to write, Alexander Graham Bell invents the telephone. All right? He makes a phone call right next door, literally in the room next door to his assistant, Thomas Watson. It works. They create the Bell Telephone Company. It ends up being a monopoly known as Ma Bell. And eventually, with government regulation, they break it down. They have to start selling off different portions of it. Part of that company still exists today, and it is known as AT&T. So if you have AT&T, it's like the great-great-grand telephone child of Alexander Graham Bell and the Bell Telephone Company. All right, now we're on our last 2 inventions. You have Christopher Sholes, Scholes. He invents the typewriter. All right, if you are looking at your computer screen right now, you will see that, oh my gosh, there is a keyboard on that we use to type. All right, so we see that change where it makes it much easier to type and communicate, and you do not have to handwrite everything. All right. Now, this will take us to George Eastman. He invents the Kodak camera. That's actually the wrong date on it. It shouldn't be 1788 because George Eastman isn't even born until 1854. He invents the Kodak camera. Prior to his invention, cameras were the size of microphones. Okay? Microwaves. I really should like re-record this, but I'm really not. He invents the Kodak camera. We still have Kodak cameras today. And it's 1888, not 1788. Okay? The idea that he uses actually eventually transforms into like movie cameras and stuff. But like the big thing that I want you guys to get out of this is that this camera that you see right here, that's the Kodak Brownie. It was invented in 1900. You could hold it in your hands. It was sold for $1. Okay, it was aimed at kids to give kids the ability to take picture, almost like a toy type thing. $1 in 1900 is worth $32.50 today. Well, not worth, but it translates. So if you were to go out and buy this, like in the store, like today, $32.50. I hope you enjoyed your notes. Email me if you have questions.